Journaling has been by far one of the most life-changing habits that I've built in my life. So let's talk about exactly how you can start journaling so that it actually becomes a productive habit in your life for both personal and career growth. Hi, this is Editing Angel. I'm currently editing this podcast episode, and I just felt the need to hop on here and quickly say that I know in my last episode I said that I promised that I would be getting back onto our regular podcast schedule, but something happened in this past week that has made it pretty much impossible for me to work and focus on anything else. I'm not ready to talk about it yet. It is very much so a delicate situation, both for me and for everyone else who is involved in the situation. So I don't know, maybe at some point I will address it. But as of right now, I guess I just want to say that my ability to create right now is at an all-time low. My mental state isn't great. So bear with me as I go through this very challenging period in life and try to figure out what my content schedule is going to look like for the next little while. So yeah, I'm going to try my best to slowly get back into the flow of things and start creating again and start posting again and just try to find some normalcy in my life. But that is why this episode is late. And will there be an episode on time next week? I will try my best, but yeah, just a bit of a shitty situation, to say the least. That's it. Anyways, sorry to start this episode off with such a low note. I promise the rest of the episode will be valuable and helpful. I talk about journaling. It's going to be a really good episode, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you find it really helpful if you're just starting your journaling journey or if you are trying to build and grow your journaling journey. I did film this episode before the events of this week, so I am much more upbeat, I promise. You won't be hearing this very sad voice or see this very haphazard face. So yeah, that's my disclaimer. Enjoy the episode. Hello, welcome back to Feel Good Lab, the podcast where we explore the intersection between personal growth and career success and all the good stuff that happens in between. I am so excited to do this episode because I just get a lot of questions about what I journal about. And I think since I started to post my weekly journaling prompts on Instagram and on TikTok, it's been demystified a little bit, but at the same time, a lot of people still ask me, it's okay, one, how do you make time to journal every day? So we'll talk about that. But also, what do you write about? And so I kind of broke my, overall productive journaling into 3 sections, which we'll talk about today, or 3 methods, really. Because I think that there's a lot of different ways that you can journal. You can journal for brain dumping. You can journal so that it actually promotes growth and you're actually prompting yourself to think about or manifest certain things in your life. You can journal just as an emotional release. You can scrapbook. You can use it as a commonplace journal. There are just so many ways that you can do it. But really today I wanted to focus on the journaling methods that I started using that I feel are so effective when it comes to growing as a person, both in your personal life and in your career life. Before we jump into all of that goodness, let's quickly talk about my feel-good moment of the week, which was just that I finished a fiction book. I actually have been struggling so hard. I've been in such a bad reading slump for the last 3 months or so, and I just haven't really been giving any time to reading. And so finally, well, actually, I think I also was in a bit of a reading slump because I didn't find, I hadn't been reading any fiction books that have really like caught my attention and was able to hold my attention. I don't know, maybe I just haven't been picking good books, or maybe my interests have just changed, but books that I thought that I was really going to like just ended up not being that great. Like they kind of were rated quite low and I DNF'd them. I don't know if my interests just changed or I've just been picking bad books, but I have just really struggled through I don't know if my interests have changed or I've just been picking bad books, but I've just really been struggling through the fiction reads that I've been reading lately. So I ended up actually DNFing 2 fiction books in like the last 3 months, which is pretty unheard of for me. I'm typically somebody who, even if the book isn't amazing, I will still want to finish it because I want to know what happens. But your girl just has not had the time to deal with that. So I finally found a book that did keep my attention all the way to the end. I finished it this week. I will probably talk about it on TikTok and on my second channel where I talk about like my reading journey and my books and stuff like that. But yeah, oh man, it honestly wasn't even that great of a book, but the feel-good moment literally just comes from the act of finishing it. Like, I'm just feeling proud that I actually finished a book, and it feels like I'm leaving this like reading slump that I've been in, which is amazing. I'm like so excited because it lined up perfectly with like Christmas break, and I feel like I can actually get some reading in this Christmas break, but that's it. Sometimes I feel good moments are just so simple and like so silly, but I'm very happy about it. So I want to quickly talk about like my whole journaling journey. That's a bit of a tongue twister. Say that 3 times fast. Journaling journey. Anywho, yeah, I guess how this all even came about. I mean, I was just one of those like girly pops, little baby girls that really liked the idea of keeping a diary. Shows probably played a part in that, but I always imagined just having like a diary that has a little locket and then there's a little key and like I have a little sparkly pen that I can write in it with. And so I remember asking my parents quite young, like probably when I was 7, when we were inside of Toys R Us one day, I asked them for this journal and they looked at it and they were like, there ain't no way, girl. Like this journal, I don't know how much it was, like $15 or something, which actually now thinking back, why was it so expensive? But anywho, it was like around $15 and they were like, yeah, there's no way that we're going to buy you this journal. Like, nice try. But then my dad actually used to take me to garage sales a lot. That was like one of the main activities that we really enjoyed doing together when I was a kid. But at this garage sale, we found a little white and pink journal. It has this little like cartoon dog on it. There was a little silver clasp on the side of the journal and a key that came with it. And I still have the journal to this day. I got it when I was 10 years old, I think. I obviously didn't have a life. I was a child, so I would just make up stories. Like, today I went to the mall with my friends. Didn't have any friends, did not go to the mall with these said imaginary friends. So yeah, that's kind of how it began. It just really started out as like nonsense. And then I think over the years, it became a place where I felt like I could just talk about my feelings, like talk about my crushes, talk about things that was going on in my life, stuff that was going on with friends. And it just somehow developed into a habit. I remember I would sometimes in high school pretend to be taking notes in the class, but really just be writing in my diary. There were periods where my best friends from high school and I would pass one notebook around and we would write like journal entries to each other. So we had a little bit of like a sisterhood of the traveling journal situation going on for a bit. I still also do have those journals. Really, it was just a place for me to be absolutely vulnerable and emotional and just like spill the tea until one day my mom read my journal, and then a few years after that, a boyfriend of mine at the time read my journal, and it just really broke the trust that I had with my journal. I felt like I could no longer just write whatever I wanted in them. I felt like I had to like write in a way that was either cryptic or write in a way that would not, I don't know, just like not really expose myself that much if anyone was to read it. So like instead of genuinely telling it my feelings, I would hold back on certain things. And that period of my life really sucked. But we're back into that stage where I do feel like I can tell my journal anything, but at the same time, my whole mindset around journaling and really the objective around journaling, I feel like has changed. At some point in my early 20s, I got sick of looking back in my journals and really only reading about like my sad days, my heartbreaks, my fights with my boyfriend, because it had become that. It had become this like black hole of just like negative thoughts and emotions. And I really wanted to change that. I wanted it to become a place where I could set goals, I could plan, I could write about the positive things in my life, because if I'm 90 and I'm reading back on my life, I probably don't just want to read about all the shitty things that happened. So yeah, I changed my perspective around like what I wanted to write about. And I think since then, I've just been slowly building and building and developing that journaling skill and habit more and more, so that it's become a tool that's really helped me grow as a human. These days, I do still like brain dump and emotion dump and trauma dump into my journal, but every time that I write about something that might be happening, that might be like causing these negative feelings in my life, I always try to take it a step further and either analyze it or try to figure out a solution or try to figure out like what went wrong in the situation. And I would write about that as well. And I feel like that has really helped me change my whole mindset around like how I deal with issues as well. Because before it would just be like, feel sad, write in journal, mope, move on. But what I've learned in both therapy and through just like my own personal growth journal, but what I learned in both my personal growth journey as well as in therapy is that if I do not properly process those emotions, I don't get over it. Like it stays with you. It stays in your body. It stays as like the weight that you carry on your shoulders. So I'm a lot more conscious now about how I process and how I work through the problems that I write about, if that makes sense. Besides the daily journaling, just telling it about my day, and the emotional journaling, I do also now use it to manifest. I use it to set goals. I use it to plan for my business, for my life. I use it to like talk about my diet, my skin, my health, everything. Like I really just use it as like a center point or like common place for me to record and figure out what's going on in my life. I think over the years, I've tried a lot of different like journaling methods. I started doing morning pages, which is just writing 3 pages of free flowing thoughts every morning a few years ago. And I think that is what led me to actually build the habit of journaling every single day in the morning. I think before it'd be like sometimes before bed, sometimes in the middle of the day. But nowadays, if I do not journal in the morning, I don't feel like I've started my day right. So yeah, morning pages definitely helped. But I think also using and trying all these different frameworks that I learned from other people or through books, I slowly just kind of developed my own framework as well. And that's really what I want to encourage you to do as well. I am going to share with you the 3 main frameworks or like categories of journaling that I do that I think really helps me. But I don't want you to think of it as like, oh, these are the frameworks that I now have to follow and I must play within the rules. Really, they're more of just a guiding point or starting point for your own journaling journey, because I think the goal really is to make sure that you create a habit and a framework that works for you specifically. And it's going to look different for everyone, as it is with a lot of just like advice that people give around personal growth, because every human is different. How you perceive things is different. How you understand things are different. So I hope that it gives you some tips, but just I hope you don't see this as like this is the true one and only like black and white way to do things, because it's not. It's just what's worked for me. And I hope it works for you, but feel free to change it however you like. So, the first framework that I use is journaling for clarity. What this really means is I'm journaling to process my thoughts and emotions. I'm journaling to clarify and set goals. I'm journaling really just to figure out what is going on in my head, or at least taking the thoughts that I have, putting it down on paper so that I can untangle it and make sense of it all. I think that this is still the baseline of my journaling. I think it's still one of the most important parts of journaling because that's just what journaling has become for me. It's become this place where I can go to unfurl the crazy thoughts that I have in my head. So I think that this method will always stick with me. The other ones may change, but this is just kind of what I have known. It's my tried and true. It's my bread and butter. And I think that it is really so important because not only is it going to help you understand yourself better and understand your emotions better, it's also going to help you see things from a higher level. When you put things on paper, it's often easier to take a step back from the situation and actually be able to evaluate what happened. It also allows you to see issues or maybe pros and cons of a situation more clearly. Really, I feel like journaling for clarity just helps you put space between you and the situation so that you can actually think about it with a clear brain. I know anything that has to do with journaling can be sometimes hard to imagine. How do you journal for clarity? I did write down some prompts that will help you if you're trying to figure out okay, what does this really look like, Angel? What does journaling for clarity sound like? So I often use this to clarify my goals and my values. I think especially now that it's the end of the year, it's the perfect time to journal for clarity and just really figure out what is it that you want over the next year? What is it that you want in Q1 and how the year has been. So some prompts for goal setting or journaling for clarity when it comes to goals are: what is a goal I'm trying to achieve and what are 3 actionable steps that I can take immediately? I think the latter part of that question is so important to include because it's great to set goals, but if you don't create a plan to actually achieve those goals, it's really going to take you nowhere. So that's one. I also wrote another one is: what skills can I learn to make achieving my goals more easy? And then who are the people that inspire me the most and what qualities do they possess that I admire and can work towards? I think those are always great to think about when you're setting any sort of goals because it gives you a framework and a little bit of a system that you can follow. It gives you more guidance. So that's kind of what I mean by journaling for clarity, right? It's okay, we're looking at our goals, but we're trying to get clearer about how to accomplish them, what it's going to take, what changes I need to make, and all of those things, kind of shining a broader light around the topic of goals. That's what's going to help you understand your overall goal plan better. Taking values as another example, some prompts that I like to use for journaling for clarity when it comes to values are: what are my top 5 personal values and how am I living in alignment with them? So I always like to evaluate what is currently going on before I try to figure out how I can improve it. Another one is: what are the biggest stressors in my life and what steps can I take to minimize them? I also have: what am I holding on to that I need to let go of? Why is it so hard to do that? The whys always get me and they end up pushing me to write 5 pages in a row. I just get so deep into it when I ask myself why. And then the last one that I wrote down was: what habits do I need to change? And what's the plan? What's the course of action that's going to take me there? But do you kind of see how when you ask yourself these questions that push you a little bit deeper, the whys and the hows, they just tend to shine a wider light on the topic. So if you imagine if your topic is in the spotlight and the area around it is dark, you're really only able to see that small circumference that the spotlight is making. But what journaling for clarity really has done for me is it widens that cone of light so that it actually covers more surface area and it just allows me to see things more clearly. I hope that that was a good visual because that's literally what I think of when I think of journaling for clarity. The second framework that has really helped me is journaling for grounding. If journaling for clarity gives me a broader scope of what's going on and pushes me to dig a little deeper, journaling for grounding kind of does the opposite. It really centers and stabilizes me into the current moment to help me de-escalate any stress and anxiety that I might be feeling. I also use it to sort of remind me of all the positive aspects in my life, especially when I am going through like a rut of any kind, when I'm in a funk. Journaling for grounding really just helps to remind me that like life is worth living and that there are a lot of positive things going on in my life right now, even though I feel like crap and I feel like everything is falling to shit. It does exactly what its name says. It grounds me. It reminds me of how far I've come, where I am, and just gives me little reminders that I should be proud of myself for certain things. So there's a few different ways that you can do this. One is definitely gratitude journaling. I think that's one that a lot of us are probably familiar with already, but gratitude journaling really is just writing down like what you're grateful for, right? I like to sometimes start my mornings with just a list of things that I'm grateful for. And I like to do this at least like once a week, once every 2 weeks, just as a nice reminder. But I will literally just make a list in my journal. It doesn't need to be full sentences or paragraphs about all the things that are going on in your life that you're grateful for. Literally just make a bullet point list. I'll be like, my dog, yummy food, having a roof over my head, this brand partnership that I'm working on, having the energy to edit today. It can be small, it can be big, but just by writing down and reminding myself of the positive things in life typically makes me feel a little bit better, like instantly. A while back, I actually created a digital journal called the 5-Minute Growth Journal that is kind of similar to that like 5-minute gratitude journal that was really popular for a little while, where it asks you like 3 things you're grateful for, some affirmations, some plans for the day. But I also designed this journal specifically to have questions that would really push your thinking and just push you to think more about like your growth and what you want to achieve. So I'll link that in the show notes if you want to check it out. But I have been referring back to that more and more these days and just prompting myself both in thinking about things that I'm grateful for, but then using that as a way to push me forward as well. So I'll be like, I'm grateful for these brand partnerships. Let's take that energy and put it into like building more of these opportunities. Oftentimes I'll use my gratitude list as a way to motivate myself as well and just remind me like, okay, I was able to achieve these things. Now, if these things make me feel good, if I'm so grateful for them, like how can we work to bring more of that into my life? The other way that you can do journaling for grounding is actually a method that I found has really helped with like moments where I feel a lot of overwhelm and anxiety. But essentially, you just want to open your journal like to a blank page and just write down a list of everything that you see, feel, hear, can smell, maybe can even taste from your immediate surrounding. Like go through your 5 senses and describe almost in detail all the things that you are experiencing in that moment. Oftentimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed and anxious, it isn't because of what's going on in the here and now. It typically is me being overwhelmed and anxious about the stuff that I have going on in the future. Even if it's like 5 minutes from now, an hour from now, tomorrow, this month, it's typically like the looming deadlines or to-do list that gets me into that state. So if I just take a second and literally like ground myself in the current moment and describe to myself like, okay, I'm sitting on a couch. I can feel how soft it is. It is beige. I really like how plush it feels against my legs. I can smell the neighbors making pasta. It smells really delicious. I can see that the sky is gray today and that makes me feel so like it almost feels like I'm writing a story sometimes when I'm doing this, but it actually helps me in 2 ways. One, it helps me focus on exactly where I'm at in that moment. And the act of just writing, like And the act of just putting pen to paper feels like a release in itself. And then the other, sometimes when I actually like get into it and start describing things, it activates my creative brain as well, because then suddenly I'm like trying to describe exactly how the clouds are moving fluidly through the sky and like getting a little poetic with it, really. But it's a fun activity for me that both is therapeutic, that grounds me, but also just feels like a release somehow. It sounds so silly when I talk about it, but honestly, just try it. The next time that you're feeling overwhelmed, that you're feeling like your endless to-do list is giving you anxiety, literally sit there, open up your journal or grab a piece of paper and write down in detail everything that you see, hear, smell, taste, touch. I think those are the five senses, and see where that gets you. At the very least, it always pulls me out of that emotion when I have to zone in and like lock in on my current environment. So yeah, try it out and let me know if it has the same effect on you. Okay, the third and last framework that I use for journaling is actually journaling for auditing. The difference between journaling for clarity and journaling for auditing really is like when I'm journaling for clarity, I'm seeking information. I'm just trying to examine the situations. I'm just trying to understand more. But when I journal for auditing, I'm in problem solving mode. I'm in solutions mode. Like I'm ready to create a plan and get it going and figure out like the most effective way to do something or the quickest way to do something. I'm in that sort of mindset. So some things that I like to quote unquote audit would be like the bottlenecks in my workflow and my productivity. I love auditing for that. I audit for fulfillment. So, like, what's going on in my life that actually fulfills me? Am I doing enough of that? How can I create a course of action that actually allows me to feel that feeling more? I audit my fears very often and really just try to poke holes in the things that are scaring me, because typically they're just derived from some sort of an anxiety of mine, and they actually are pretty irrational. So I like to audit that quite frequently to make sure that I'm in the right headspace and I'm always leaning more towards like a positive mindset rather than doing something out of fear. So to audit for bottlenecks, you could ask yourself a question like, what are the things that are stopping you from achieving your goals or from accomplishing something specific? What are the obstacles and how can you overcome them? Can you overcome them by learning a new skill? Can you overcome them by practice? By doing, by asking, like, what's the solution that will take you past this hurdle? When I'm auditing for fulfillment, for example, I'll ask myself, like, what areas of my life need the most attention right now? Like, what areas have I really been neglecting? And then on the flip side, what areas of my life are taking up too much time? Like, am I dedicating too much time and energy and effort into something where I should really be dividing that time and attention with something else? When you're auditing, you should always ask yourself, like, how do I feel in my body right now? And how do I feel about the situation when I'm writing about it? I think that's always an important aspect to include in your auditing, because it teaches you to really listen to how your body is feeling, how your mind is feeling. And I think that sooner or later, it will kind of develop into this like natural reaction or skill where you can start to audit things that happen more in real time rather than having to look back retrospectively and analyze certain situations. And then lastly, one of the things that I always try to ask myself is like, what are the things that I can do right now that will energize me? It's so easy for me to feel overwhelmed from my endless to-do list, which I know that every small business owner, entrepreneur has an endless to-do list, but like when things start to become due, too many things start to become due all at once, I always just feel so overwhelmed. So instead of focusing on that, I try to pull myself out and be like, what is one thing that I can do, maybe from the to-do list, maybe not from the to-do list, that just makes me feel energized? And then when it comes to your fears, you could ask yourself something like, what is holding me back right now? What is the idea of failure that I'm holding on to in my head, whether it's rational or irrational, realistic or unrealistic? Like, what is that fear? What's holding me back? Write down your worst possible outcomes if you do end up failing at something, and then rate the probability of it happening. Like, actually give it a rating out of 10. 10 being the most probable, 0 being it won't happen, like it's impossible. Because often, like doing that exercise always reminds me that so many of my fears are one, very irrational and not probable, but also two, like writing it down and reading it over to myself, reading things like, I don't think I'm good enough, or I'm scared that people aren't going to like me. When you're able to be that vulnerable and then step back and look at it, you'll start to see patterns and you'll just start to really understand yourself more and start to see that the root of a lot of your current issues actually stretch a lot deeper and stretch to issues that you might have not resolved from when you were younger. So it gives you a little bit of clarity as well. It gives you clarity into like, okay, maybe these are things that I need to resolve and figure out before I move on because they're clearly holding me back in my life. I did say that journaling for clarity really is one of my favorite and like one of the most important frameworks that I use, but I do think that auditing as well makes such a huge difference. I sometimes feel like journaling for clarity and journaling for auditing are very similar. You're just looking at things with a different mindset. Instead of looking at it with curiosity, like you would do with journaling for clarity, you're really trying to dig deeper in the ways of like, how can I improve this and how can I resolve this issue? There really are a ton of other things that I journal for as well. Besides just journaling productively, I say in quotations, productively, I really just journal about everything. Like I have silly journals as well. I have a perfume journal. I like to write the notes of the perfumes that I've been testing and my thoughts on them. I have a business journal where I write about like all of my ideas, my hopes and dreams when it comes to my business. I have travel journals. I have journals that I like to scrapbook in. It is a bit crazy me trying to keep track of all of these notebooks, but it brings me joy. Like journaling genuinely brings me joy. So I'm so thankful that it also can be used in a way that really promotes personal and career growth. So many of my ideas, so many of my goals start out in my journal as just a thought in passing, as just a daily diary entry. And I work on those and work on those and build on those to turn them into things that could actually happen to me and things that I can accomplish. So yeah, I honestly don't know if I could have gotten as far as I have without this habit. Like I'm sure I could have, maybe just at a slower pace, but truly it is one of the best things that I have ever done for myself was building that habit of journaling because there is just so many different ways that you can use it. If nothing more, I hope that this video at least inspired you to try journaling if you haven't already, or try to evaluate whether the way that you are journaling is actually helping you. I get it. Like, I love trauma dumping into my journal, but having boxes and boxes of journals that talk about how depressed or anxious or sad I am really was not doing me any good. And so yeah, I just challenge you to think about how you're journaling if you're already a journaler and see if you can turn it into a tool that is actually productive for your growth. Besides the 5-minute growth journal that I talked about, which I'll include in the show notes, I did recently also create a 30-day journaling challenge for us. So it is a part of my newsletter. You put your email in and I will send you one journaling prompt every day for the next 30 days just to help you sort of build the habit of writing every single day. I think oftentimes that is the hardest part, is just starting and building that habit. So if you want to join that challenge, feel free. I'll put it in the show notes as well. It is, yeah, that's it. It's just like an email campaign where I send you a journaling prompt every day into your email inbox. Make sure that you actually write that prompt down and then answer it though. Like even if it's just responding to my email with your answer, I want you to get in the habit of like answering that prompt every single day so that you're actually building that habit. That's the whole point of the challenge. It really is. I mean, yes, there's great questions in it that prompt you to think about your life and think about your growth, but The goal of it really is just to help you build a habit. So if that's something you're struggling with, check the show notes. If you made it this far, thank you so much. I appreciate you so much, Feel Good Fam. You have no idea. I use these podcast episodes as a little bit of like a therapy session as well. I'm not gonna lie. So thanks for being here for me. Thanks for sharing these ideas with me. And I'm so excited to create more episodes for you that are helpful. I want you to comment a little sun emoji on this episode to let me know that you were a real one and you stayed all the way till the end. I would honestly also love it if you left me an idea of what you want to hear about in future episodes. I have been struggling a little bit with like ideating for this podcast. I don't know why I've been on this like creative block lately, so that would help me out a ton as well. But that is everything for this episode. I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and I will catch you in the next episode. Bye.